Is 6:09. The legislature is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bailey. Here. Mr. Bendet. Here. Mr. Casal. Here. Mr. Choquette. Here. Ms. Doran. Present. Mr. Fiacco. Here. Mr. Fleming. Here. Mr. Grant. Present. Mr. Grimm. Here. Mr. Harrington. Present. Mr. Leverage. Here. Mr. Maloney. Here. Ms. Nichols. Here. Mr. Patiri. Here. Mr. Stahl. Here. Ms. Weaver. Here. Mr. Wysocki. Here. Mr. Zalewski. Here. Chairwoman Hoffman.
Here.
There are 19 present.
Mr. Harrington?
Mr. Chairwoman, I move that the legislature resolve itself in the committee of the whole for the purpose of conducting the public hearing.
Hearing no objections, I hereby appoint Legislator Scott Bendet, Chair of the Legislative Committee on Planning and Tourism, to conduct the public hearing.
And you also have Jeff Bloomfield, IDA CEO for the City of Rensselaer.
Okay. Thank you. The Rensselaer County Legislature will hold a public meeting at 5:45 PM on Tuesday, September 13th, 2020.
I'll read the notice of
Okay,
I
my
will, thank you.
apologies.
The Rensselaer County Legislature will hold a public hearing at 5:45 PM on Tuesday, September 13th, 2022, in the Legislative Chambers located at 1600 7th Ave, Troy, New York, to discuss the potential redevelopment of an underutilized property within the county and the county's intent to apply for the Restore New York Communities Initiative Round 6 funding administered by the Empire State Development Corporation, ESD. The county is considering Restore New York Round 6 funding to facilitate the rehabilitation and redevelopment of a vacant mill building located at 6 Green Street and First Ave in the city of Rensselaer, and to be known as the Railroad Place Apartments when completed. The project will be sponsored by a private developer, Brighton Construction, Inc., who owns the current project site and the adjacent parcel to be used for the associated parking. The project will create up to 32 residential apartments at competitive rental rates to provide safe and decent housing to promote workforce development efforts in Rensselaer County and Capital Region still recovering to pre-pandemic employment levels. The project is consistent with the current zoning and land use plans and effect for the city of Rensselaer and downtown revitalization plans being pursued by the city and the county. The substantial redevelopment of this vacant mill building will return the property to the tax rolls, create new residential housing units, help stabilize the southern portion of downtown Rensselaer, and encourage additional private investment within the city and the county. As part of the Restore New York funding application, the county is publishing for 3 consecutive days this legal notice and the property assessment list below, showing the current building at 2 Green Street and the property eligible for Restore New York funding. Residents and the other interested persons are invited to attend the public hearing and ask questions or offer suggestions regarding this or any other underutilized property in the Restore New York program administered by ESD. Individuals with special needs who wish to attend should contact the legislature at 518-270-2880 so that necessary access arrangements can be made for the hearing.
Okay. The public hearing to discuss the Rensselaer County Restore New York Round 6 funding application is now open. The rules of the chair are as follows. First, anyone wishing to speak at this public hearing must sign in at the table at the entrance to the legislative chambers. When you are called upon to speak, please move quickly to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Are there any questions? At this time, is there anyone wishing to speak? And the first person that we have here is Jim Thatcher from the Community Development.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Chair.
Thank you, members of the legislature and the public. I don't know if I'll need this or not, because I have a pretty good voice, hopefully. My name is Jim Thatcher. I work with CT Mail Associates out of Latham and their Glens Falls office. I live in Queensbury, New York, as my address. And I am manager of community development for CT Mail. So we're a private consulting firm, and I do a lot of community and economic development grant writing, project management, and consulting for municipalities, private developers, and sometimes some nonprofits. So I don't want to duplicate what was in the public legal notice, because that was a very good description of why you're holding this hearing. But I want to bring out a couple points from that legal notice and sort of a little bit of background for the legislature on this Restore New York program and the project that the county is considering sponsoring through this grant program. And then I'll be quiet, and I think Jack Bonesteel wants to say a couple things, and we'll get out of your hair for the evening. This Restore New York program that Empire State Development has created is now in round 6. But the last rounds were the last time they funded this program was 2017. It was very popular back then, 2016, 2017, and because it's primarily a pass-through of grant money to private property owners or developers, or in this case both, to redevelop derelict, vacant, abandoned, surplus properties, primarily in urban areas, although there could be rural projects as well, certainly. But properties that are sort of the toughest to get back on the tax rolls, ones that have been vacant for decades, ones that people don't know what to do with. Maybe someone in your community has tried over the years and failed at getting enough capital involved, taking an old school, let's say, and getting a new use for that kind of building. You know, these are sort of the albatrosses of all of your communities. So this program is created to provide grant money through a municipality, a town, village, city, or county, but pass through to a developer that's going to actually bankroll the redevelopment of these derelict properties, and not in a Band-Aid kind of way, in a substantial way that's really going to complete the project, whether it's all residential or a mixed use in a downtown area, get some new tenants in, whether it's storefronts occupied. In this case, the one on Green Street in Rensselaer is going to be all residential, as you heard in the notice. But return these to the tax rolls, benefit the communities by bringing people back to the community, reusing these white elephants, if you will, and then moving on to the next kind of project. The reason Empire State Development created this program was, again, what I kind of just summarized. These are supposed to be the toughest properties that no one's wanted to touch or really been able to get their arms around over the last several years, if not decades, because of environmental issues. Maybe they're in a tough spot of town, a tough part of the city that developers aren't really interested in. The economics don't always work with a bank, getting a commercial mortgage or a construction loan. You know, these are multi-million-dollar projects potentially that take a fair amount of financing. So this grant program is a way to sort of help the county pass through those funds to increase the rate of return, really sort of help the bottom line of the developer on some of the higher costs involved with redevelopment. If it's a historic property, there's added costs in preservation, with the state wanting certain features or architectural character preserved, and that just adds cost, whereas some developers could just go to a greenfield or a vacant parcel somewhere and build new at a much lower cost. Back in August, the county executive put in what's called an intent to apply form for the property at 2 Green Street, the Harder Knitting Mill. And that was accepted by Empire State Development as a viable project. So the county was invited to do a full application, which is due in October for this program. The amount that the county could receive is up to $2 million, which sounds like a lot, but I think the Braytons are looking at a project budget now that's going to be well north of $4.5 million, if not higher, for the Harder Mill. As the notice said, they are looking to do 32 market rate apartments in downtown Rensselaer, or just on the southern tip near Columbia Turnpike, where the mill is situated. Bill Brayton has told me that the rents they're looking at right now are actually a little below market. They want to, I think, price this very competitively and get it leased up quickly when it's finished, presumably in 2024. And again, as the notice summarized, it's really for the expanding workforce in the county, you know, good workforce, market rate housing. You've got Regeneron expanding. You've got state agencies in the city of Rensselaer, short distance over to Albany, across the river. A lot of need now for good rental, solid rental housing that's affordable, but not necessarily low on the low income spectrum. So I think they want to stay at that market or slightly below market rate. And the Braytons are working with a bank on a bona fide mortgage. They're probably going to have to put in their own equity as well. So this program is not meant to fund the entire cost. It's meant to be, you know, anywhere between, say, 30 and 60% of the cost, depending on the final budget. It's just really enough incentive to make the whole financial scheme work for the project. And I know they're working with the City of Rensselaer IDA. The Planning Commission has approved the project. Seeker is done. It's really in line for the county to just submit this application, which the Braytons have hired my services to prepare on your behalf if you authorize it and approve it, and see what the results are so they can get underway hopefully next year with construction of that long vacant property in Rensselaer. So I don't know, Jack, do you want to add anything, or?
I'll call Jack up next. You're done?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Thatcher. It's all right. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jack Bonesteel.
Hey.
See a lot of familiar faces here since I retired in 2019. I wasn't as bored as the sergeant was, but Phil brought me back out of retirement after like 2 months. And my job was to get the IDA back up and running in the city of Rensselaer. We did that. Having accomplished that, August 22nd, we approved 2 projects. One is $26 million. That's the Hilton project. We're going to have another look at that at the end of September. The other one is the 2 Green Street project with Mr. Brayton, who is, he's back here, by the way. He's a native of Rensselaer, world-class builder, and he's going to do a great job with this. So I was going to introduce Jim, but now I'm here just to thank you all for your consideration. This application is due by 3 p.m. October 11th. Without you, we wouldn't be able to do it. So we hope that you'll approve it and authorize Steve McLaughlin to sign it and submit it. Mayor Stammel asked him to do it because we couldn't submit 2. He wants to submit 1 application. So the intent to apply was submitted by Steve at our request. He submitted it. New York State liked the idea. And hopefully they liked it enough that when the application goes in, it'll be approved. By the way, housing is important in the capital region. In the 2022 annual report done by the Capital Region Economic Development Council, they noted that there was a shortage of housing. If we're to return jobs to the pre-pandemic levels, we need to have more housing in the county. So this will help do that, and we appreciate your support. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this proposal? Is there anyone else willing to speak on this proposal? Mr. Stahl. Brian, come on up. Legislator Stahl would like to make a comment? You're welcome.
I'll be very, very short. I just want to say that I do know the Braytons. They have done a number of other projects in the city. They do wonderful work, and the city does definitely need to have more housing, more projects. The buildings that are there, many of them are in disrepair, and any work that we can do like this is going to be a great benefit to the city. And as I said before, the Braytons, they do wonderful work, so it would be a godsend to the city.
Thank you. At this time, is there anyone else who'd be willing to speak on this issue? Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this issue? At this time, is there anyone else to speak on this issue? Hearing none, and inasmuch as all persons present were given the opportunity to speak, I declare this public hearing closed at 6:26 PM. Thank you for your participation.